Welcome to Pioneers in Payments, where payments experts share their insights. Now, here's our host, Donna Blum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Pioneers in Payments. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Chris Storbeck from Payments Advisory Trust. Welcome, Chris.
Good morning. How are you today, Donna?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today. Looking forward to getting a little information from you, from your perspective in the payments industry. But to kick us off, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, your background in payments, and the work that you do at Payments Advisory Trust?
Absolutely. So, Donna, I've been in the business for a little over 20 years. Originally started in the stored value area of the business with Incom. Ran their sales organization for several years. Then I moved on to MCX Merchant Consumer Exchange, which was a consortium that was started by 40 of the merchants, really to create a new payments network out there. And spent about 4.5 years with them, worked with them on putting deals together and working closely with the larger retailers. From there, spent several years at FIS. A lot of acronyms and names, as we know in the business here. With FIS, really focused on faster payments and how to maximize those, both from a consumer standpoint as well as a B2B standpoint. And currently, several years ago, I started an organization, Payments Advisory Trust, really to bring merchants and vendors together, as well as FIs, and how to help vendors understand and navigate how to work with merchants and how to place products in there. As we're seeing, there's a constant change. There's a lot of new products and solutions coming out every day. And, a lot of good ideas come from smaller operations. And, how do they enter into the field of working with larger merchants? And so I help them set their strategy up, open doors, and build the retail distribution.
That's fantastic. So you have quite a variety of experience in the industry, and we're familiar with Incom. They're one of our clients.
Yep.
Okay, so we're here really to talk about all that's happening in the industry and to gain your perspective. What would you say is the most notable trend in the payments industry today?
I don't know if there's a single one, but everybody's talking about AI today. So, and how that's going to impact, and clearly AI is going to have an impact. I think it already has started to have an impact. You look at the things that are happening around loyalty and the consumer engagement from AI and what that's going to do, being able to suggest new products, drive you down different paths. How it's going to deal with fraud, both positively and negatively. And those are just a couple of things I think in the AI. So AI is definitely going to have a big impact on what's going on in the marketplace. I think the other thing is, as I'm looking at it, what I'm seeing a lot more is what kind of new payment solutions are coming to the marketplace. For years we've talked about, even as I go back to MCX, we were looking for ways to bring lower cost of transactions into the ecosystem. And today, some of those ideas are actually percolating. I mean, ACH has made big advances, and so we're seeing more and more around what can be done with ACH at the point of sale for merchants, online, with subscription-based services. So I think that's the other area that is starting to percolate more and more, and I think it's actually got some traction. I think at the MCX days, we were probably a little ahead of our schedule, but it's nice to see that. Another area that I've seen a lot of action is around the B2B. It's sort of a space that is new, but it's not new. It's been around for a long time, but for the merchants and for people that are uncovering and discovering that I've got these clients or these customers in my store, and they can be small SMB businesses or they can be large educational or government agencies. And how do you deal with those? And how do you work with those clients? Because they require separate things from invoicing. There's an organization out there, TreviPay, that has been, very active in that space and been around for quite a while. We're seeing more and more merchants start to say, how do I uncover that? And how do we work and build that business out? Because the customer's there, and how do we continue to maximize it? And the other thing too is clearly fraud is a constant challenge. And so how do we continue to fight the fraud? The fraudsters are extremely good at what they do. That's a 24/7 job. And how do we do that? Because at the end of the day, that's costing both merchants, the financial institutions, and us as consumers money. So I think that's the other area I'm seeing still a lot of concern around, and how do we deal with that?
Right. Yes, definitely. You touched on several that are talked about at all of the industry events. And they're not going away anytime soon, especially fraud. You touched on a couple of things, opportunities, challenges, but what would you say is the greatest opportunity for organizations that process payments?
Being ahead of the curve or staying very, very relevant. I think a lot of times we're seeing folks saying, listen, I'm going to take a wait and see attitude, which is the worst situation. So at the bare minimum, if you're not going to be a leader, be a super fast follower, because you can't catch up, and the speed continues to pick up. And so when you start to be a laggard, you're going to miss the opportunity to be able to engage, learn, and deliver what the consumer needs at the end of the day. I think that's one of the things that I found over my career is making sure that you are in that mix somehow, because even if you fail at certain things, you still are learning, and those learnings can be taken on to deliver better and broader solutions. So, it's fail fast and learn, but don't be a laggard. So I think that's one of the bigger components here. The other thing is how do you get engaged and stay engaged with your industry? I recently spent some time with the Merchant Consumer Exchange, Consumer Group, MAG, and MAG has done a really good job of bringing the industry together, both from the vendor side as well as the merchant side. And the transfer of information, I think, is critical. And so I think that's the other thing is how do you stay involved in trade organizations that are really relevant? Because it's learning and understanding. It's those interaction, engaging, and networking type of things that you can share information together. Because while you may think you're unique, it's like going to the doctor. It's like, I'm going to get diagnosed with something, and you're like, I'm the only one in the world. No, the doctors have seen thousands of these. So your brethren within the industry, which may be your competitor, but in payments, typically not your competitor. But how do you trade those ideas, and how do you work closer together? I think that's one of the biggest things is the learning, the engagement, and networking is just absolutely critical.
Right, I agree. Actually, if you think about it, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. There are organizations that have already traveled that journey, and they've learned, what to do, what not to do. That there's some best practices that they've identified. You may as well leverage that, right? Instead of having to make all the same mistakes yourself.
Yeah, and I think a great example we've talked about a couple of times here is the fraud. Is everybody wants to fight fraud, so that and it's fun to watch. Even the larger retailers, they tend to be a little bit further advanced than what the mid-sized retailers at times, but they're both the transfer information. So nobody wants fraud. So how do you take and you build the team or build the coalition and say, hey, we're going to fight the fraud? And so I think those are the areas that are absolutely critical, because you are all on the same team in most cases within the challenges in the payments industry.
Right. You can, you know, uh, have a meeting of the minds and together figure out the solution for fighting fraud, then everybody benefits, right? So that's good.
Absolutely. And it's even, it goes beyond, just the fraud. It's even new solutions or challenges that you may be fighting or facing with, different IT structures or that type of thing. I mean, that's the other challenge I think a lot of organizations are dealing with right now. IT resources are very, very tight. There's an ROI that has to be done on these. Everybody wants their project to be done, and how do you get through that queue and then get it executed in a timely manner? We did a session at the MAG a couple of years ago where we talked to merchants about the challenges they face when they have to bring a new product in, and it was a very interesting panel. And one of the panelists said, I may think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I really believe in it, but now I've got to do my job and I've got to go in and sell my C-suite that this is the right thing. And he says, I may have 30 seconds to get a soundbite in on this. And then if I get their buy-in, I've got to go sell the IT organization. So while you may think that I'm just going to jump and be able to do this, because I really do believe in it, I've got this whole internal battle now that I have to fight. And I think that's the other thing too, is how do you start to help, if you're selling something or positioning a solution, how do you actually help your client sell internally? I think that challenge is a lot of times bigger than the actual sales process itself. And so I think that's the other thing that I'm hearing more and more of is just the internal challenges, especially with the ROIs and the IT structures.
Yeah, that makes sense. So often we would start maybe talking with the business people first, and the technical people aren't really part of the conversation, but eventually it needs to go there. And yeah, it's helpful if you just have buy-in from all the groups, and providing your customers that kind of advice so that they can get that internal buy-in is very good. Yeah.
I think too is you look at some of these things you've got the business, you've got the IT, but sometimes you have the marketing organization. So I think that's the other component. Marketing people always want everything now. They tend to have a pretty good stick because they're driving business. Where the business guys, you've got a need and a problem to solve, and the IT guys are going, geez, I've got all these problems to solve over here. So bringing those together, and again, how do you build that coalition of support with inside, your client to arm them and get them through the whole process? Because it isn't easy on their side either.
No, it's not at all. Well, okay, so we talked about the largest opportunity, and I think you may have touched a little bit on what you think may be the biggest challenge for organizations that process payments. Is it fraud or is it something else?
I mean, the biggest challenge is, I think, clearly fraud's one of them. I think there's several things. One is you've got things like fraud, which, it's what's happening at the point of sale or, online or whatever it may be. And that transaction, just the nuances. It could be the rules. What do we got to do? Card not present, whatever it may be. So you've got those. But then you also have, the other challenges of building, like I said, the support internally. Also wading through where do I need to go and what do I need to do to help grow my business? And again, that takes the coalition internally of internal people to say, hey, here's what we're looking for. But, is it a new payment type? Is it something to do with loyalty? And then you get into different distribution types. You've got an airline, you've got a ticket counter, you're processing transactions in the air, something different. You've got a fuel solution, you've got a forecourt in-store, you've got a massive retailer with lots of lanes and possibly with online, and how do you bring those together? So I think, as you look at these challenges, how do you identify them? How do you prioritize them? And then how do you ultimately take them to sell them through the process internally to get those things done? So I think those are some of the biggest challenges. I feel for anybody that sits in those chairs right now, because there is so much coming at them. There's so much stuff to consume that, and there's a lot of noise around the edges. And that's just the external. And what do we got to do on the internal side to make sure my business operates every day? So that's all the fraud stuff and everything that sits over here. So I've got the external stuff I got to figure out, and I got all the internal stuff I'm trying to fight off. So, and I think that's the other thing is, how do you start to build? One of the things is I've gone through this working a lot with the merchants, very close with them, is how do you build the C-suite knowledge base of just how important payments are? Because in a lot of cases, the C-suite says, hey, it's a cost of doing business. Not necessarily the best path, because that payment is involving a whole host of things: customer interaction, loyalty, cost, and so it's really, how do you start to get the C-suite educated just how important the payments are to your overall ecosystem? Yes, it is a transaction, and it is closing the sale, but it's all the other things that tie around these transactions today. So I think those are some of the larger challenges, especially as I look at it from a merchant standpoint. Those are the things that they're really facing today.
Yeah, I really see payments as being a differentiator. I mean, it's definitely a way to set yourself apart and to really please your clients, right? So if your clients aren't pleased, they're going to start looking somewhere else. So it's, I think it would be a mistake to underestimate the value of payments.
It really is. I'm going through a remodel on a house right now, so I've been spending a lot of time at my local you know supply stores, large national ones typically, and it's been interesting to see some of the changes that some of them have made, which makes my life easier. When I go to a large merchant and I buy things in the store online, it's all showing up online, so I know exactly what I bought, when I bought it, what I paid for it, which is for me was like it's sort of a wow factor. So that's a great example of, hey, here's a customer engagement tool. The other thing is I've how do I get through a transaction line faster? And so the self checkout, how do you continue to improve those? Those are all things I think that for me as a consumer, I'm looking at. Make my life simple, make it easy, give me my detail so I know where it is and what I bought. And then if I need to return something, it's no hassle. It's all right there, because typically the receipt's flying out the door or whatever. It's stuck in a box somewhere, especially when you're doing a remodel, as an example. So yeah, I think those are all things that it's delight your customer and understand what they need within your distribution channel.
Very good. Okay, so kind of the last question, which is my favorite. If you had to take your sum total of knowledge about all things in the payments industry and provide our audience with one silver bullet piece of advice, what would that be?
I've probably mentioned this already. And again, I've learned this working with these large organizations over the time. And it's stay relevant, stay in the forefront of everything you can. Hire great people that can bring that knowledge, that want to be excited about payments, because that gel and that team really will drive your success. So I think that's probably the most important piece of that. And then make sure you're involved in the industry. I hate to say it, I have gray hair now. There'll be a time in the next probably few years that I won't want to be doing this. I might want to play golf. So we're seeing more and more people, use that word retirement. And so how do we bring in the younger group to make them excited about this fantastic industry, and teach them things so they can take it to the next level. So it's more than one thing I just gave you there, but for me, I think that's really what I'm seeing is giving back to the industry, staying in the forefront, hiring great people, and make sure you're connected with others in other businesses, to stay relevant on things.
That's great advice. Okay, well, Chris, before I let you go, I'd love for you to share with our audience how they might be able to get in touch with you or learn more about the services that you provide at Payments Advisory Trust. What information would you like to share?
Really, three ways to do it. One, through our webpage at paymentsadvisorytrust.com, and reach out to me directly, and then through the LinkedIn site that I've got out there. So those are really pretty simple stuff. And again, if you have questions, the other thing too is what I like to do is if there's people out there that are starting doing a business, or either folks that are looking for advice, there's no harm in reaching out to people and talking to people and trying to learn. So I always welcome that as well if you just want to have a quick conversation and have questions. So I'll learn something, you'll learn something, and we can build a new relationship.
That's great. Well, thank you for that. I'm hoping some of our audience will take you up on that.
Me too. So, Don, I've really appreciated the time this morning, and thanks for reaching out. So, and again, if anybody does have any questions or needs out there, please feel free to reach to me.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time. And I want to thank everybody for watching today. Have a great day.